I like. There's something about the paper. I don't know. I guess I'm conditioned, but it's great to be with you. Hope you're having a great day. And what I was reading, and I would highly recommend it. Every Tuesday in the New York Times, they have what's called the Science Times. It is really excellent. They cover topics that you typically won't find trending in the mainstream, although many of them are. It's well done. It's a wonderful feature called Science Times every Tuesday, just like clockwork. I have so much to report today, so much going on, such intriguing research being conducted around the world. It is astonishing to me. I just people wanting the curious. One of the most wonderful features of humans is the curiosity gene. I don't know if there's such a gene. I'm going to be talking about genes. Um, being curious, intellectually curious, or just being curious, ideas. How does this work? Why does that happen? Why leads you to theory? Theories answer the question why something happens. Why does it happen? It's an explanation in a word. And I remember as a graduate student being introduced to, this world of research, and I took to it right away because a theory building is sort of like what children do all the time. You notice their curiosity, always asking why? It drives parents and teachers crazy. It shouldn't. The more they ask why, the better. Why? Why is that? Why is that, Dad? Why is that, Mom? Why does that happen? That seems to be innate. That seems to be a universal trait. No matter what culture, just wanting to know why, the why of things. And then, of course, there's the what. You have to know what something is. Description, explanation, prediction. That's the sequence in science. First, know what it is, why it does what it does, why it behaves the way it does, and then science, knowing those two things, seeks to do what? Predict what will happen. Description, explanation, prediction. I can remember my one professor writing that on the board all the time. And what he often would say is that in the social sciences, where we have fallen down is in the what. That we jumped to explanation, theory building, without knowing what the thing was in the first place, which leads to a lot of confusion. That seems to be happening in the world of nutrition, too. There's not enough theory. Consequently, we get all these mixed upside down, sideways, backwards, conflicting studies. And it's not good for the consumer, for you, for me, for the general public, because we don't know what to do, what to eat, what not to eat, why to eat it, when to eat it, how to eat it, with whom, what, where, and so on. And they're off doing all these studies, and there's not enough theory. What's presumed with the theory that there was a lot of description that went on. In the natural sciences, they initially, whether it was Newton or whomever, spent a lot of time just observing things. What is it? And then why does it behave the way it does? And now that we know about both of those, can we predict what will happen? Whether that's with human behavior, meteorological phenomena, other animal species, whatever, processes, and so on. So there's a little tutorial on some of the basics of science.
Well, today I posted what resources do you use to keep your mind sharp on our Facebook. So people can go on there and answer. I mean,
And social media is not one of them.
right.
You have to read, Gare. Reading. I'm telling you, that is an old school. It's a universal principle. It's almost metaphysical in as concrete as reading is. The more children read, it seems the more advanced they are. And the more adults read, the more advanced there's something about reading. I mean, reading. And to be a good writer, you have to read.
Right.
Yes. And it's a fundamental, important thing for humans to do.
Up by us, where I live at in Pasco County, Pasco, Hernando, and St. Leo University, all will let you check out a book if you're a member of the Pasco County Library System.
Good.
You can actually go to the university and check out a book there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always thought it was curious that in the library, they began to lock the place down because people were stealing books. I said, well, hell, just buy more books. Let them steal the books. At least they're not stealing candy bars. I thought, okay, they're stealing books. I get it. I understand. Well, just buy them in duplicate or, buy three at a time. And then they started putting all these censors. I'm being ironic, of course. You know the point I'm trying to make. So there's a story I do want to share before I get to two that are really that'll tie into my guest today and what she wants to talk about. And I share this with you. If you're watching, I'm holding up the New York Times, Science Times front page. What you see are the hands of a person who is afflicted with leprosy. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Look at that. That is heartbreaking. It turns out that in India, 100,000 people a year are diagnosed with leprosy. You might be thinking, oh, that's some medieval disease caused by a bacterium. No, it's not. And I bring it up because I'm reminded of Mother Teresa, who worked with the lepers. Not protected, she didn't care. I'll tell you a little bit about the story. I can't get into all of it. But I wanted to I remember the other day I said, we all wake up in this country with many things not to worry about. Leprosy is one of them. Can you imagine that? What if you had to wake up to that every day? Lepre is the bacterium that is responsible for leprosy. Welcome back to Let's Talk Nutrition. You may be wondering, why would I want to spend a moment talking about this? After all, it's not our problem. Well, it's a problem of humanity. Health workers back in 2005 in India and the World Health Organization believed that leprosy had been vanquished, but not so quick and not so much. 100,000 people a year are diagnosed with leprosy in India. As I said, we wake up in this country every day, and most parts of the world, leprosy has been contained. But there, it is not. It is a real concern, and it's such an hideous, insidious disease. It is that bacterium can live dormant for as many as 20 years, and then one day, all of a sudden, it will express itself. It's a microbacterium, Lepre is. It's a close relation, if you will, to the bacterium that causes tuberculosis. This disease has been around for centuries. Gary tells me that in Game of Thrones, leprosy is a theme.
Yeah, it's a matter of they have diseases and they're killing people off. So.
I see. I have not watched one episode of that. And I've been encouraged to watch it. I guess I need to do that, but nevertheless, what's so difficult about this disease? It cannot be cultured in the lab.
What does that mean?
They can't grow it in a dish. Okay? Therefore, they can't study it. So much of the biological mysteries of Lepre, that bacterium, remain just that, mysteries. And it is heartbreaking. Children, no one is immune from it. And I guess as a theme of the human condition and what people struggle with, I wanted to talk about it, and I brought it up before. I suspect most talk shows wouldn't, but I just think it's important for us to understand that in other parts of the world, people struggle with certain diseases, infectious diseases, that we do not. And we do not because we have vaccines for many of these diseases. So all these folks who, are anti-vaxxers and think that vaccines were created by some demonic entity, you should think twice a little bit. There is no vaccine for leprosy. I'll leave it there. If you want to know more about this, go to the New York Times edition, yesterday's edition, and every Tuesday they publish the Science Times. There's also a study and a story, I should say, and studies associated with the story in the Science Times from yesterday that deals with obesity in a very unique way, in that there is a genetic mutation that keeps people thin. That was the headline. And it's a small percentage of people that have the mutation. And ironically, if you don't, well, let me break it down this way. Start from the beginning. You have people, if you notice, that struggle with managing weight. They just have a difficult time managing their weight. Scientists published a study in the journal. It's entitled Cell. And they used the data from the United Kingdom Biobank, which includes 500,000 people between the ages of 40 to 69. And the participants in that data bank have provided DNA samples and medical records. So this is a wonderful data set. There was also a study, and I'll get to the first study in a minute. In the second study, in the same journal, used the data from this population to develop a genetic risk score for obesity. No, I'm not kidding. It can help predict as early as childhood who is high risk for a lifetime of obesity, they reported. It can help predict your risk, and that's a good thing. Together, the studies confirm a hypothesis that researchers have understood for a long time, that there are biological reasons that some people struggle mightily with their weight and others do not. It turns out that this study, what they called appetite dulling mutation, there's a gene that dulls your appetite. The gene is called MC4R. People with MC4R mutations tend to be obese. When that gene is turned off, they tend to eat more. When the gene is turned on, they tend not to eat, and they remain thin. I'll come back. I'll tell you a little bit more, and then there's a story about exercise that relates to the theme for today, too.
Don't be stressed out.
Dominique Ostrander is my guest today, and I have a couple of stories in my back pocket here that that will relate to what Dominique wants to focus on today. I've been reporting on this genetic mutation that keeps people thin. Let me just set this up, and then I'll bring Dominique on. I'll get her to react to this. There's a gene called MC4R. People that have that mutation tend to be obese. Researchers have recorded as many as 300 mutations with this particular gene, and they are the most common single gene cause of obesity. Mutations in the gene account for about 6% of children with severe obesity. The mutation destroys the ability to experience satiety or fullness. Consequently, when people normally eat a meal, the gene is switched on and then sends a signal to your brain that you're full, right? Then the gene turns itself off. But some people carry a rare mutation in that gene that prevents the gene from working. Therefore, their bodies never get the signal that they have consumed enough food. They're always what? Hungry. They feel hungry and are often overweight and then obese. The risk of check this out. The risk of diabetes and heart disease is 50% higher than those without the mutation. So when that gene is turned off, you don't get the you don't get the feeling of satiety. When the gene is turned on, and there's about some people 6%, again, the MC4R gene is always on instead of always off because of different mutations. The people continually feel satiated when the gene is turned on. Consequently, you can't tempt them with chocolate cake, chocolate ice cream, chocolate candy, chocolate anything. Nothing. They won't bite. No pun intended. So that's about 6% of the population. I share that with you to let you know that genes are part of this obesity epidemic, a small part of the variance, however. And with that, I'll introduce my guest, of course, Dominique Ostrander, no stranger to Let's Talk Nutrition, educator for Jarrow Formulas, one of the leading science-based, evidence-based supplement companies in the natural products industry. Dominique, welcome to Let's Talk Nutrition.
Thank you, Dr. Garko. Always a pleasure to be here.
Like going to school around here, isn't it?
It is. It is. I like it.
You like that, huh?
Brings back, yeah. Oh, yeah. Brings back memories. I like it.
That's an interesting gene, this MC4R gene. Many experts believe, Dominique, that the regulation of hunger and satiety is a key to managing weight. I mean, that doesn't sound earth-shattering and media alerting, but it does make sense. If that gene is mutated one way or another, either turned on or turned off, you can either be obese or thin, no matter what. It's about 6% of the population. I thought it was interesting. It's an important point about the involvement of genetics in obesity, and some people, no matter what they do, they can't. No matter what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? Here's a
that
quiz.
definitely, Brian.
Go ahead, please.
Well, you wonder if. Okay, so if you, let's say you have, because most people obviously aren't going to go through genetic testing. So you would go to your physician, and you are already obese, and you would say, is there any way to do some genetic testing to see if I have this gene?
Mutation.
And then you do, and it's turned on. Is there a way to turn it off?
Well, if it's turned on, you will tend to be thin because you always feel full. If it's turned off, you never feel full. So there's different.
Okay, so is there a way to turn it? So if
can they turn it on and off if they wanted to? I don't know.
Right. Is there something that can be done?
Don't know. They
You
didn't
know,
talk about that.
yeah.
That's an interesting. That's where genetic research becomes intriguing and
Mhm.
hopeful. Can they turn it on? Can they turn it off? I don't know. I don't know. Genetics is not my area of expertise, and neither is particle physics. But um, we can use I can still report on it, but they didn't talk about that too much
Mhm.
in the.
Because you wonder, and other things like, for example, so let the genetic predisposition, that term that we use all the time, right? We have a genetic predisposition for fill in the blank, heart disease. We have a genetic predisposition for cancer, right? Whatever that fill in the blank is, right? Everybody will say at some point we have a genetic predisposition. So knowing that we have this genetic predisposition, the way you live your life, the choices that you make, even a genetic predisposition to alcoholism or drug addiction, for example. So, what do you do with that?
Uh,
If you know that you have a genetic predisposition, then the choices that you make can either, as I always said, you're sitting on the fence. You jump the fence one way or you jump it the other way.
Oftentimes, people will. Let me see if I can give you an analogy. If I blindfold you and put you on a street corner where there's heavy traffic, the odds are very good you're going to step out into that traffic sooner or later and get hit, right? Because you can't
Right.
see, you don't know. You don't know what's out there in front of you. On the other hand, if I take the blindfold off and you can see the traffic and you know that it's dangerous, you'll exercise more caution. With genetic predispositions, if you don't know you have a genetic predisposition for X, Y, or Z, you're blindfolded. You don't know that you have it. If we could take the blindfold off or otherwise inform you that you have a mutation in the MC4R gene such that you will always want to eat and never feel full, if we discover that early in life as a child, you can then start to condition that child's relationship with food in such a way and teach the child how to eat such that they don't fall prey to the mutation. Here's a quiz question. At what age, typically, do we see children starting to become obese? How soon do you think that starts to happen on average? What would you say? Take a wild guess.
Probably really young.
Use
Really young.
use your instinct. What do you think?
My instinct would say probably 3 or 4 years old.
Bingo! Ding 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 ding. Bender is my guest today. The topic of exercise is going to come up today, and I have a couple of stories that relate to that theme that are relevant to what Dominique wants to talk about. You are absolutely right. It's 3.5 years of age. The researchers found that children started to become obese. By age 8, children often were obese, and by late adolescence, they weighed on average 30 pounds more than those with low risk scores. What they did was, in this study, they evaluated these children with this gene mutation, and it took to about 3.5 when it started to set in. Not before that, really, but about 3.5, and then by age 8, they were victimized by this gene mutation on MC4R. It's unfortunate, but knowing it early is good because then you can teach the child, inform them about that mutation and what they need to do not to fall prey to the mutation. But I wanted to share that. I thought it was interesting. Please tell the audience what you want to talk about today. We talked about that yesterday a little bit by text, so I'll leave it to you to share with them.
Well, there was an article that was published on April 22nd, actually, that it was about metformin, which is the drug that's used to lower blood glucose levels. But they found that people that stayed on metformin who lost weight were able to keep it off. And they were trying to figure out why. What was it about this drug that helped people keep it off versus other people? And again, there were not everyone that stayed on the drug was able to keep their weight loss off, but the majority of them were. And so it made me think about what you and I have talked about on the air several times about blood glucose control and successful weight loss plans. And how it all ties together, and how it's very important over time. If that's your goal, to keep your weight off, or to even begin the weight loss journey, is to stabilize blood glucose levels.
They said in the article that you sent me that metformin, and I'm quoting them, may not only lower blood glucose levels, it may also help people who lose weight to keep it off, as you were underscoring here. But there are natural compounds that can do the same thing, aren't there?
I think so. I think definitely there are supplements that can have that actually have a proven effect on blood glucose levels, maintaining blood glucose. And again, when you're doing that, what are we doing in actuality? We're helping control cravings. We're keeping your blood sugar levels so that you're not getting these, as I used to say to patients, cravings are not commands. It's just a craving. You don't always have to respond to it. Sort of like a bratty child, right? You don't want to always respond to it.
Metformin, that drug has been around a long time.
A long time.
I'm not opposed to that drug, by the way.
Me either. And it's interesting because metformin, people are taking it. And again, I'm not advocating this. I'm just, informing. People are taking it as an anti-aging. It's falling in that category.
Yeah, I've taken it. I was on it, and then there are other natural compounds, and you have some of them in your arsenal at Jarrow Formulas. Do you all have berberine?
No, I knew you were going to ask me that. We don't. We don't have berberine.
You need
no.
Tell Jarrow.
Like it.
Put it on me. Say, I was talking with Dr. Garko, who says you must get berberine into the repertoire.
Yeah, my doctor recommended it for me.
This is Gary's allopathic. Check this out, Dominique. Gary's allopathically trained physician told him to get berberine. I was shy, I almost fell out of the chair. I said, whoever that doctor is, keep that doctor. That doctor is smart. That's a wonderful supplement. You know that, right?
Well, I do. I'm actually very familiar with it. I don't, there are things that work very similar to it,
I know.
like pterostilbene, for example.
And we'll talk
So,
about that today. I'm going to give you
yeah.
plenty of opportunity to unpack your little black bag of supplements.
Thank you.
You, I was rude. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Are you working hard?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm actually in Jacksonville right now.
Oh, you're at the beach?
Yeah, I'm hanging out at the beach.
You have suns?
Can you hear the seagulls flying by right now?
Do you have sunscreen on?
Yeah,
Is that pina
exactly.
colada?
Louder
Is
up
that
than
is that
sun.
pina colada loaded or what?
Yes, yeah. Do you hear the steel drum band in the background?
Oh yeah, the steel drums. All right. So you're in Jacksonville and you're visiting accounts there, are you?
I am, and you know, as I've said before, Jara Formulas crosses over pharmaceutically, so there is a few hospitals up here that I'll be visiting.
Tell the audience what you're doing walking into a hospital.
So the very first probiotic or multi-strain probiotic ever made, manufactured, and sold in the United States in 1986, which is our Jarodophilus original, is or has been used for now quite a few years in the prevention of necrotizing enterocolitis with preemies.
What does that mean? Those are fancy terms. Necrotizing peritonitis. Is that what you said?
It's a horrible infection that premature infants are or they can get because of being premature, and so it's very important that their systems are so fragile that, you know, drugs are not where you want to go. And so over the course of the years, studies have shown that probiotic use, and specifically Jarodophilus original, which is a 3.4 billion, actually will prevent necrotizing enterocolitis.
And they
It's
give
a
that to
deadly infection.
preemie. How do they give that to them?
That's a really good question. That the dispensing of the probiotic is very interesting.
All right, save that thought. Save that thought.
Okay.
This underscores the point that our relationship with these flora, these bacteria that live in our gut, we have evolved with them and they with us. We are the host. We're the hotel. They're the guest. But they confer health benefits. These are guests that don't steal the towels and soaps and all that stuff. They leave things behind. They help you out. They're your friend. We'll be back. So let's talk nutrition coast to coast and globally. My guest today is Dominique Ostrander, educator for Jarrow Formulas. Going to be talking about how to manage your blood glucose levels, therefore insulin levels, the implications of not doing that are serious. Not just in terms of managing weight and avoiding type 2 diabetes, but other metabolic, endocrine kind of related issues. It can get a little complicated. We'll try not to make it too difficult to understand and explain it in ways that will make sense. There are a number of stories that are trending today about Americans sitting too much, which is related to this, being sedentary. You know, we are tethered to electronic devices, whether it's in our hand, on our desk, wherever, TVs and computers and iPads and this and that. And we have become, you know, our ancient ancestors did not have comfort and convenience. There was a lot of discomfort, inconvenience, and a lot of stress. We have comfort, convenience, and a lot of stress. And they were not sedentary. They didn't sit around. If they did, they weren't around. They would die. They had to be on the move, hunting and gathering, fleeing predators. We, you know, are sedentary. For the most part, this nation, and not only us, but globally. And humans are sitting too much. Exercise can help. It turns out, and this is going to come up today with Dominique, I'm setting it up for her. I'm sort of a greenskeeper on the golf course, getting the putting area ready for her. The workouts, this study, by the way, there's a story about it in the New York Times. It's 10 years after an exercise study, benefits persist. That was the headline. The workouts we completed years ago continue to influence and improve our health today. Some people think, well, you quit exercising, whatever you've invested in is gone within a matter of weeks and months and maybe even weeks. Well, maybe not so fast and not so much. This, according to this new study, and it's rather intriguing, I should say, of the current lives and health of people who joined an exercise study a decade ago. The findings suggest that the benefits of exercise, it's reported in the New York Times by Gretchen Reynolds, can be more persistent than was heretofore considered, even if people are not exercising to the same extent that they had previously performed. But the impacts may also depend on the types and amounts of exercise that were engaged in during that period of time. This is all intriguing to me because for the longest time we have felt that experts, exercise physiologists and experts and, whatever, have felt that, you quit exercising and you lose everything that you invested in. This is encouraging. The study is called the STRIDE study, STRRIDE. It's an acronym for Studies Targeting Risk Reduction Interventions Through Defined Exercise. That's why they call it STRIDE. Try to say that fast 10 times. In the experiment, which ran from 1998 to 2003, hundreds of sedentary, overweight volunteers between the ages of 40 and 60 remained inactive as a control or begun exercising. Good study so far. Their exercise was either moderate, such as walking, or more vigorous, comparable to jogging, and lasted until people had burned at least several hundred calories per workout. Okay. Volunteers completed 3 sessions of their assigned workout each week for 8 months. While the scientists tracked changes in their aerobic fitness, their blood pressure, insulin sensitivity, they measured waist circumference, and so on. In general, it's reported that each of the health markers improved, surprise, surprise, in people who exercised and not in the controls who were sedentary. The scientists then said farewell to all of them, and we'll be in touch. 10 years later, this study, I'm not making this up, they contacted the volunteers 10 years later who lived near Duke University and asked if they would join a reunion study. How clever. More than 100 of them showed up. How about that? Representing each of the exercise group and the controls. These men and women returned to the lab for new tests of their aerobic fitness and metabolic health. They completed questionnaires, their current medical condition was assessed, and medications were measured or accounted for, and how often they exercised each week. Then they started comparing. Most of the men and women from the control group who had not exercised for 10 years before had larger waistlines at the moment now, while the exercisers back then displayed little, if any, middle-age spread compared to their decade earlier selves. This is amazing. Those from the control group were also less fit. Most had lost about 10% of their aerobic capacity, which is typical of the decline seen after age 40, I should tell you, and when most of us will lose about 1% of our fitness. But those men and women who had exercised vigorously for 8 months, remember, 10 years ago, during that STRIDE study, retained substantially more fitness. I'm shocked. On average, their aerobic capacity had fallen by only 5% compared to when they had joined the STRIDE study. And those few who reported still exercising at least 4 times a week were more fit now than they were a decade before. Well, what an investment. Who knew? This is amazing. My guest is Dominique Ostrander. Dominique, welcome back to Let's Talk Nutrition. I know you're going to talk about exercise today. I served this up just for you.
Thank you.
How does it taste?
It tastes great, actually. I have my daughter she's said to me for years and years, Mom, you think everything can be cured by exercise and or prayer? And I was like,
how about them together?
Well,
What if you did them together?
Helped. Well, exactly. I mean, running for me for years was a moving meditation. I mean, there was. I don't really think that there's not. I mean, exercise really does help. I don't see. I mean, obviously there's going to be limitations. Obviously there's going to be those people that for whatever reason can't. I get it. I'm not saying, but I mean, for the most part, I think it's something that the move it or lose it is it's very true.
Well, what I'm so excited about is that they've called upon these people 10 years later, and the
Right.
group and they tracked them for 8 months 10 years earlier, and that the experimental group, the group that engaged in exercise for 8 months, compared to the controls who didn't, 10 years later, even the experimental group who did not exercise all that much over the following 10 years fared much better compared to the controls. And those who even exercised, continued to exercise over the 10 years, as well as the 8 months during the study, even fared better. But my point is that there seems to be a benefit even later on. We'll pick it up there, and then how this fits into your theme of managing blood glucose and insulin levels through physical activity. My guest is Dominique Ostrander. This applies to everybody today. We all need to do this. Thin, not thin, overweight, whatever. of science and health science, generally speaking, there's a phenomenon called legacy effects. Legacy effects. For example, a legacy effect is a lingering, sustained health consequence of something that was done. For example, maybe in an experiment. Let me be more specific. There have been a number of diabetes experiments over the probably scores, if not hundreds of them, hundreds, maybe even thousands, I don't know, where blood sugar was managed and tightly controlled in the experiment. They used diet, they used drugs, they used any other method, exercise, and so on, and often had a better heart health even years later after the experiment was done than diabetics that were a control and didn't engage in the treatment. They weren't part of the experimental group. It's called a legacy effect. This new study on exercise, there's always been a question whether exercise had a legacy effect. This study seems to confirm the hypothesis that it does. 10 years later, after the study, and the participants who engaged in exercise over an 8-month period compared to controls who did not fared far better in their health and fitness 10 years later. My guest is Dominique Ostrander. What does exercise have to do with blood glucose management, in your opinion? Because you put that in your notes to me that is one thing that can be done to help manage glucose levels.
Right, exactly. Okay, so back in the day when I was a practicing exercise physiologist, we used to have this abbreviation, and it might be a little cheeky now, but we used to call it a better butter burner.
A better butter burner.
A better butter burner.
Mm-hmm.
And your body becomes very good at utilizing energy sources. So, for example, you become a better butter burner. If you're physically fit and you're active and you decide to have a meal that's probably high in complex or, high in carbohydrates, let's say, not even complex carbohydrates, but high in refined carbohydrates, your body becomes better at utilizing that excess sugar than if you were somebody that was sedentary. Your muscles become very adept at taking in, replacing muscle glycogen, and then utilizing the rest. So it's an important thing that happens when you become physically fit. It's just like when I used to say that if you have high triglycerides, for example, and what that means is your doctor is actually measuring the free fatty acids that are circulating in your bloodstream. So Sally doesn't do any activity. She sits on her couch pretty much. She's a secretary. She, goes home from work and doesn't do anything, doesn't go out for a walk, doesn't go to the gym, just does basic household chores and things like that. And Dr. Joe decides that he's going to measure her triglycerides. Well, he's measuring her free fatty acids. And if Sally were to get active, she would have lower triglycerides because her body becomes far more adept at utilizing those free fatty acids for energy, where they're burned in the mitochondria. But if Sally doesn't become physically fit, she's not a better butter burner and consequently runs the chances of having high triglycerides. People that exercise very frequently, like you don't see athletes unless they, have type 1 diabetes, but, you don't see somebody that's physically fit very often having high blood sugar levels. Why? Because they are adept at utilizing blood glucose for energy. Their Krebs cycle, there's a lot of science behind this, but, I'm giving you a basic cliff-noted version, is they become better butter burners. And so if you're running high blood glucose and you're carrying a lot of weight in your stomach, I suggest you get active really fast. Go out there and walk. Nobody's saying that you got to become a marathoner, but you should be walking.
I took up dancing.
So Gary has two stories to tell you. I'll let him tell you. I'll let him tell you whatever sequence he wants.
Okay.
Tell Dominique, in other words, the audience, the stories.
Okay. So about a month ago, I went and had blood work done, and my glucose was 380.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And my triglycerides and everything were just
Off the chain.
off the chain. So my doctor said, "You're going to die." He goes, "There's no stopping this. You're out of control. You need to do something now." So I went on a keto diet. And then about 2 weeks ago, doc suggested that I start picking up doing some type of exercise, doing something. Dr. Garko did. So I started line dancing at a place in town called the Dallas Pool. So they teach line dancing 5 days a week. So I started going down there, and then about a week ago, I redid my blood, and it was at 80. My triglycerides dropped. The only thing that went up was
Your LDL cholesterol went up a little bit.
that's it.
Yeah.
But I started.
Well, we come back. I have the reports here. I'll pull them out, and I'll tell you what went up, and I'll give my hypothesis as to why they went up. But he walks in, after he does this, and he says to me, "Doc," I said, "What?" He said, "I changed my diet like you were talking about, and I started exercising." And he said, "I've changed my life in 30 days. And I looked at him. I said, "You've been sitting here with me for 2 years. You're now having the epiphany."
I played racquetball for the first time last night.
He was stunned that changing your diet, what you eat, would have such a profound effect. He said, "I've changed my life in 30 days. I said, "Wow." Of course, being ironic. Congratulations, Gary. You're doing great. We'll be back. Welcome to Let's Talk Nutrition. Dominique Ostrander is my guest. Gary has 2 stories to tell you, Dominique. He's anxious to tell you. The one story, go ahead, Gary. You dropped your...
I dropped my blood sugar to 80. Okay. And then while doing that, I started exercising more and I started dancing. And the reason why I chose, I thought it would be simple. And then
and you would enjoy it.
And I would enjoy it. And it was inside, so I wouldn't have to worry about it raining all the time, and it was free. That was the other thing. It was free. So it gave me something to do. But now, like last night, I played racquetball for the first time ever. I've never been able to do that because I haven't been able to move, up and down the court or anything else. So really exercising, within 30 days, this is not like it took months. This was a 30-day change.
The only thing that his glucose dropped to 80 from 385 or whatever it was. It dropped to 80. The only thing that went up was his AST and his ALT, these enzyme assays.
Yeah, the liver enzymes.
Yeah, his liver, the aspartate aminotransferase and the alanine aminotransferase. Enzymes went up a little bit. His doctor and I tend to agree, and it didn't. They're a little out of range. They are out of range. They're high. They may go down if he loses a little bit more weight. But all in all,
he's staying on keto, right?
He's on a keto. He's on a keto plan, and it seems to be his
that's the reason why.
His triglycerides are 167. They're a little high. It should be less than 150. His HDL is just 1 point under. It's 39 instead of 40. But other than that, he's really come a long way just in a 30-day period. To the point that, you wanted to talk about today, and we are talking about it, the managing of glucose. And exercise also burns glucose, which helps people who are having issues, insulin resistance. This is a wonderful thing for them to do, no?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not a fan of the keto diet, honestly. I understand, if we need to do, a crash, we need to do 30-day crash to get your blood sugar under control, but I don't feel that keto is a sustainable way of eating by any means.
Oh, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
I feel that used strategically, notice my language, strategically for a certain period of time, it can get people on, give them a sense of victory and get them on the right road. And, it can work if you do it right. You can do it in a healthy way, not some of this crazy stuff that people are doing. He's doing it under his doctor's supervision, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you 100%. It's not sustainable. I told him that. I said, you're not going to be able to eat this way the rest of your life. You can't go without eating carbohydrate, man. And just keep doing fatty acid degradation, burning fats, which is what you were talking about to make ketone bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Dietary supplements at Jarrow formulas that can help manage blood glucose and consequently insulin levels.
Well, my top choice is always Glucose Optimizer. No question about it. That's always my go-to because of the synergistic blend of alpha-lipoic acid, Banaba, Gymnema, bitter melon, magnesium, resveratrol, everything together in this for controlling blood sugar is outstanding, truly outstanding.
That product.
That's my go-to, and you don't even have to take all of it. So a lot of people, it's so effective because our serving size is 4 tablets on the Glucose Optimizer. So there are a lot of people that actually feel that their blood glucose is under control with 2, for example. But again, if you're running high blood glucose levels and you're aware of this, we always have the disclaimer of check with your physician first, and obviously you're not going to stop any of your medications and then go on supplements. Obviously you're not going to do that. But if you're consistently been running high blood sugar and you haven't gone on a medication, then I would definitely consider a supplement like Glucose Optimizer from Jar Formulas and see how you do with it. Take all 4 as we recommend, and see where you're at and measure those blood glucose levels. And again, I am not one to advocate taking a supplement without lifestyle changes, because you're not going to have success. And then you're going to say, oh, well, this supplement didn't work. Well, it's not magic. Honestly, a medication's not going to work either, ultimately, if you don't make the dietary and lifestyle changes that you need to make.
Well, Gary, to a certain extent, is doing that with his introduction of dancing with his partner into his routine and being more physically active. He's doing that. That's one lifestyle behavior that he's now modified, being more physically active. So he's on the right road. I mean, that's a remarkable improvement in 30. He went from 380 on his glucose down to 80.
Right, and I understand that, but again, so much of that drastic change has to do with the fact that he eliminated carbohydrates, for one. I mean, that, first and foremost, that really did play a huge impact.
Of course.
And because he wasn't exercising. So just by eliminating carbohydrates, and then adding the physical activity, of course, really helped drop his blood sugar. But again, I'm of the thought, and I'm old school in that way, where, we want to make the changes that are sustainable. And, okay, so, and I realize this analogy is quite dramatic, but, okay, so you stop smoking crack, but then you pick up cigarettes, and that's one of the things that we see all the time when people replace one bad way of eating or one addiction with another. And so for me, as an exercise physiologist, while it's great that you're having results with keto and dancing and these changes, I would have liked to see you implement the right way of eating from the get-go.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
Right, no, and I understand that. And so the transition then from getting off of keto, and again, I understand the small victories. I understand, the entire picture of it. But again, we've got to get Gary to eat like normal. We've got to get him to eat, fruits and vegetables and grains and things and fiber and things that nutritionally will have a far better impact. So, in fact, there was an article, I don't know if you saw this or if you had talked about it on another show, about the article was titled, "Not Eating Good Food Worse Than Eating Bad Food." Did you see that?
Not eating good food is worse than eating bad food. I don't know. Let's talk about that. We'll come back.
Want to
question of the day. A study published, brand new study in the Journal of the American Medical Association on the amount of sitting that Americans are engaged in. They looked at a period from 2007 to 2016, and they collected, there were about 52,000 people, nearly 52,000 involved in the study, and they calculated the trends in total time people spent sitting from 2007, as I said, to 2016. Overall, teens and adults in 2016 spent on average of an hour more each day sitting than they did in 2007. Wow. And most people did all that sitting either in front of a TV or watching videos. Tell you a little more, then I'll ask the question. 62% of children in 2016 that were 5 to 11 years of age spent 2 or more hours watching TV or videos every day, and 59% of teens did the same. Here's the question. What percent of adults spent 2 or more hours watching TV or videos every day? 35% or 65%? What percent of adults spent 2 or more hours watching TV or videos every day? 35% or 65%? With the right answer, you'll get a free membership to a gym where they'll work you to so you can't move. No, I'm just kidding. You'll get a $25 supplement gift card.
877-897-8255. That's 877-897-TALK.
Question is, what percent of adults spent in 2016 2 or more hours watching TV or videos? 35% or 65%? How much time do you spend in front of a TV? 30 minutes. How much, Dominique?
I would say probably an hour and a half in the evenings if I can stay awake that long.
I said, I'm surprised. I'm shocked that you spend that amount of time. I whispered 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it depends. Honestly, it could be that. It really depends on if I could stay awake. I'm horrible the second I start watching television. But we're in the middle of watching Parenthood on Netflix, which I'm loving. So.
What's that about?
It's a family of 4 siblings and the parents and
their
children and
their dysfunction.
Yeah, it's really good, actually.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying that. So, Glucose Optimizer. Janima, you sell that freestanding, don't you?
Not freestanding, no.
It's in the Glucose Optimizer?
It is. We do sell resveratrol and alpha-lipoic acid separately. And then, of course, we have our wild bitter melon separately also. That's as part of the Glucose Optimizer. Magnesium, too, is actually in that as well.
That product is wonderful, the Glucose Optimizer.
It is. It really is.
Make sure you save a bottle for me.
Okay.
Okay? I can use.
Okie-dokie.
Let's go to Washington, Illinois. We had a call from Washington before. We have. Washington, how does he remember? Washington, Illinois. Stephen's amazing. Janelle lives there. Janelle, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. Where's Washington, Illinois?
It's just east of Peoria.
Just east of Peoria.
Central Illinois.
It's in central Illinois. Where's Chicago relative to where? North. Way north. That's where
way north.
Yeah, that's where my daughter lives now.
I'm a Salukis fan myself, though.
She said that this winter, it was her first winter in Chicago. There were days.
I ate for her.
She said, she called me one morning. She said, "Dad, it's 30 below." I said, "It's 30 degrees." "No, Dad, 30 below. I got to go to work. I'm intimidated." I said, "Well, put on your mittens."
It's brutal by the lake.
It's brutal by the lake. Yeah. Were you born and raised in Washington, Illinois?
No, but I've been in this area all my life, within 30 miles.
Y'all don't have an accent up there, you know.
much.
Not much. That's considered the pure English, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Midwest.
Okay.
Midwest. Yeah.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, I would also just like to say I use Glucose Optimizer, and I really, really like it.
you do use it.
Yes, I do.
Well,
I've
thank
used
you.
it for probably, 8-10 years.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It served you well then.
It does. I have a blood sugar problem, but it's not bad. I'm hypoglycemic, and so it seems to keep it in check pretty well.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That'll make Jara Rogovan very happy.
Good.
How are you doing otherwise with your health? Are you doing okay?
Yes, other than some allergies. This time of year brings the allergies out. So
What do you
keep
think
those
is the
in
best thing that you do for your health?
oh boy,
The best thing that you think you do every day? The one
I think watch my eating.
you do.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Do you commit much nutritional sin?
Yeah, every once in a while.
That was good.
What's the fun of living if you can't?
That was good, Janelle. Yeah. What do you expect? I'm human. What's the matter with you, you dummy?
Exactly.
She's saying, she's thinking, ooh, and this guy's asking me all these questions. You're like a client. What percent of adults spend 2 or more hours watching TV or videos a day? 35 or 65%?
I didn't hear when you were talking about that. My guess is 65.
That's
because I think
that's
it's a lot
exactly
higher
right.
than what we realize.
That
Okay.
I think it's higher than that, but I think it's more than 2 hours a day,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But
Yeah.
you're right. You want a $25 supplement gift card. If I could give you another one just for being entertaining, I would.
Oh, I love it. Thanks.
Yeah, the suits will have my head. I'm giving away money here left and right. They say, "What are you doing, man?" Thank you for listening. You're a good sport. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dominique, thank you for sharing your knowledge and insight. And the Glucose Optimizer, there you go. A 10-year user of the product, man.
Yeah, that's great.
See?
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you here. Give my regards to that special person in your life. You know who I mean.
I do.
Mr. Douglas. Is he doing well?
He's doing great.
Tell him I said hello. In
I will.
the meanwhile, Glucose Optimizer to control and manage your blood glucose levels. It's good for you. It's good for your health.
Everyone's raving about the newest botanical